Hey, what's up, folks? Welcome back to On Texas Football. I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers. Pleased to be joined by fellow lifetime Longhorn, the young prodigy CJ Vogel. On this special edition of On Texas Football, we're going to be breaking down one of the articles from one of my favorite draft analysts out there, Matt Miller, this draft analyst for ESPN. And he did a way too early look ahead to the 2027 draft and the prospects you should keep an eye on at each position. And I'll just say the Longhorns are well represented, CJ. That's why I wanted to get into this. So shout out to our friends over at Advanced Pain Care for sponsoring this edition of On Texas Football. We'll tell you more about them a little bit later. But let's dive into this list. And shout out to my man, Matt Miller, as well. So starting with quarterbacks, we're not going to bury the lead here. He's got Arch Manning. Now, he doesn't rank them. He doesn't list them. They're not numbered. He just has 5 quarterbacks listed. He's got Arch Manning. He's got Dante Moore, Brendan Sorsby. Trinidad Chambers is his bonus pick. He's getting a little wild there. And then Sam Levitt. It's a sleeper among this group. What are your thoughts, though? He's got Arch Manning among those top quarterbacks coming out. A lot of people feel like he could be 1 overall if things work out right. What does Arch have to do in your mind to maintain that kind of status?
Yeah, stay healthy, stay upright, and continue moving kind of in that same line of play that we saw in the back half of the year, right? And, Arch, I think there's plenty to clean up mechanically. Consistency is a big issue for Arch, but altogether, I think he's got the game-breaking ability that you desire and covet for the NFL teams in the NFL draft. And, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that he's going to be Josh Allen at the next level, but we've seen that with the Bills at times with Josh Allen, where it feels like for whatever reason, Josh just puts this team on his back and kind of drags them to the end zone, right? And that happens time and time again. We saw that towards the back end of the year where it was 3rd and long, very uncomfortable situations offensively, and Arch got the job done. That didn't happen earlier in the year, but we saw that growth. I'll tell you this. There's also some chatter this year that had Arch declared he probably would have gone very early in this year's draft as well. But he's going to be in that conversation. I tell you, Dante Moore returning, probably the right decision. I tell you what, I know folks are going to look at the body of work and the win and loss record at Cincinnati and look back at what Texas Tech will eventually put up in the Big 12 this year. Brendan Sorsby is a heck of a quarterback. He makes some throws that you don't find anywhere else but on Sunday afternoons. That's a guy I'm very excited to see, and I'd probably have him ranked higher than Chambliss and Sam Levitt, no doubt about that.
Wow. Yeah. It's a good point, though, about Arch. And what I like about Arch late in the season is that he overcame the obstacles, right? He overcame the pass protection, the lack of a running game. He did not allow it to limit his development and his ascension. And all those things Texas never really found an identity. He became the identity. But for him to be able to excel in spite of all of the issues just shows me once you improve the pieces around him, it's a scary thought how good Arch could be. So I'm with you on that. There's no doubt.
One other thing, R.J. Hamilton points this out all the time. The slow starts, the rough games, the performances that any other quarterback, you probably sit there and wonder, how do they recover? Arch just brushed it off, and he's got that mental fortitude that I think any NFL GM and head coach would look at and say, I want that to be the guy in my huddle every single Sunday for a full season.
It's interesting, because I remember Brett Veach talking about Patrick Mahomes, and when he was scouting Patrick Mahomes, the GM for the Kansas City Chiefs, said one of his favorite games was when they got blown out by Iowa State. And he said he just wanted to watch his demeanor, his body language, the way he responded to adversity, the fight, all that stuff. And you can tell a lot by a quarterback in those games where all the chips are stacked against you. You're not having your best game. Your teammates aren't necessarily helping you out. How do you respond to adversity? I agree with you, man. I think that's where he earned a lot of folks' respect, is the way he handled that first half of the season. All right, good stuff there. Let's move it on to the next one here on the list for my man Matt Miller. He's got the wide receiver position where the Longhorns are represented. Cam Coleman at the top of this group. He's got Cam Coleman ahead. He didn't rank him. He just put Cam Coleman first and then Jeremiah Smith second. I'm like, everybody would put Jeremiah Smith first, but that's my man Matt Miller. He's got Ryan Williams third, the Alabama receiver, and the sleeper is Nick Marsh, who is now at Indiana. I like that, actually. I think he's a good sleeper receiver for them. But Cam Coleman, is Cam Coleman an automatic lock to be a first-round pick? I feel like his production and on-field production, the numbers, don't necessarily reflect it, but you got to watch him and see him. He's an eye test first round guy. The production and the stats don't necessarily match up with that, the productivity.
No, you're probably right, but now he's playing with a quarterback who is going to be in conversations to be a first-round pick as well. And beyond anything else, he's playing with a quarterback that can get the ball in the same zip code as Cam Coleman when he runs routes. Rod, that was something that for 2 years was not available to him at Auburn. So that should help regardless. And I do think when you watch Cam Coleman, you see things on tape that maybe only a handful of guys in the entire country can do.
Agreed.
You know, that's the differentiator because his numbers are very pedestrian, especially for a guy of this acclaim, you know, one of the top players in the portal. Obviously, he's on this list now. So folks elsewhere are talking about him being a high draft pick. You just watch him move. You watch the body control. You watch the ball skills, and you say, hey, man, that's different. So I'm excited for that. And again, the quarterback play, it's only going to help. It wouldn't surprise me if he's a guy that plays with a comma next year, becomes a 4,000-yard guy. It's something that in 2 years he barely got to that mark. Rod, I think he smashes it.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I know, like I said, you look at him, you go, oh, yeah. But you got to go look at the offense at Auburn and how talk about limitations and limiting him as a player. But my favorite stat is that he led the country in deep contested catches.
Yes.
And among all the receivers with double-digit deep contested targets, he had the best catch rate of all the players with double-digit deep contested targets. So
it's a great stat.
Yeah, he's a grown man out there. Ain't no doubt.
And it's a little twofold, right? And this is kind of my knock on Cam Coleman just quickly here. You almost want just a medium amount of contested catches. Right? Because that tells you, on your other reps, you're separating. And that's the one thing with Cam Coleman that's maybe not elite yet is that separation ability. But, hey, if you got a guy like me dangling over the side of you trying to make a play on the ball and I can't do anything about it, who cares, right? That's Cam Coleman.
Yeah, and that's right. In Sark's offense, he will get schemed open more.
Very much true.
Get schemed open to have separation via the scheme. I agree with you. And I want to see if he can give you any yak ability because that's also something that they have not tapped into at Auburn. They didn't. It's his yak ability. I don't even know if he can give you yak at all. I think he can in Sark's offense.
He's going to get a screen pass and say, what is this?
What? A target behind the line of scrimmage.
Turn the ball back to Cinder.
Gonna panic when it happens. All right, moving on here. At tight ends, strangely enough, they got Terrence Carter Jr. from Texas Tech, the top of this group, Tredez Green from LSU, Jamari Johnson from Oregon. But then the sleeper, because they only got 4 guys on this list at tight end, Michael Masunas.
I like it.
Now at Texas. I had no idea that Michael Masunas was getting this kind of attention from the NFL scouts. So this was actually a really pleasant surprise for me. I didn't realize that he was getting that kind of love early on.
No, I think it's going to be one of the big surprises. Maybe not the hero canoe of last year's portal cycle, but one where you look back and say, okay, well, he wasn't one of the top 4 all-conference guys. He didn't have a lot of highlight reel plays or anything like that coming in, but towards the back end of the year, you sit there and say, man, I'm glad we got this guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's going to be Masunas. And again, he makes his money on the inline, moving bodies in the run game. He can be a valuable piece for you in the vertical passing game, but not necessarily a specialist there altogether. He buys into blocking. That's the toughest part for college tight ends to me. He buys into it and wants to get his nose dirty when it comes to the trenches.
So maybe this is the juice, or at least a boost the running game needs too, is that finally you get 2 really physical, blocking tight ends in the run game. Because Nick Townsend he wants to be physical. He wants to take somebody's head off. Halftime, you got to worry about his technique because he's trying to waylay somebody. And then you got a tight end like Masunas, who you said he's going to be a plus player for you, an asset at blocking in the run game. Maybe it adds some juice in the run game. Maybe Texas hadn't had that kind of physical element in the run game with their black and tight ends. All right, moving on. Let's go. Speaking of blocking, let's look at the tackles here. Now, this is phenomenal. Now, there's been a lot of talk about bumping Brandon Baker down inside, but Matt Miller on his way too early look at prospects for the 2027 draft position by position. He's got Brandon Baker and Trevor Gooseby as the first 2 tackles that he lists. And then he's got Jordan Seaton, the Colorado tackle that Texas was pursuing. And then Jacob Ponton, Texas Tech, is the sleeper on his list. So he's only got 4 tackles listed, and 2 of them are Texas tackles. One, that Texas is thinking about bumping down inside. Are we sleeping on Brandon Baker? Is I guess the question, because everybody knows Gooseby is that dude. Are we sleeping on Baker? Is the question.
That's a great question, and probably so, because again, we've talked about it on other episodes. When you look at who grew the most from week 1 to week 13 or game 13, it's obviously Arch that comes to mind first, and probably right behind him is Brandon Baker, right?
Yeah.
Because early in the year is very tough to get the ball rolling in the right direction for him. Towards the back end, you never really heard his name, and that's kind of what you want from your tackles. And that's why I sat there and I said, hey, I think your tackles are in a good spot. Now, could his body project more so towards the interior in the NFL? Perhaps. But when you're playing SEC caliber guys like Georgia, A&M, I think Arkansas even has a couple edge rushers that aren't necessarily terrible, and you're looking as good as you did as a year 2 guy, first year contributor, you got yourself a bright future. And let's not forget 5-star guy, 5-star pedigree in from California. It's going to be interesting to see now with Melvin Siani coming in, who actually wins that job, who bumps inside, because Siani himself is going to be a guy that towards the back end of 2026 ends up showing up on a number of these boards as well.
Yeah, no, that's impressive for Brandon Baker. And it can only add to your resume if you say I can play multiple positions. I can play tackle for you, and I can bump inside and play in guard for you. I think it just makes you more attractive to the NFL too. So maybe that's part of the sales pitch. It's like, hey, Brent, there's a better chance of you being a higher pick in the draft and making a roster and sticking on a roster. Yes. If you can move around on the offensive line and play multiple spots. So, but Brandon Baker getting a lot of love, man. I like that. All right. So Texas in a good position tackle-wise, looking at Matt Miller's way too early look at the 2027 draft. At edge, let's look at edge here. It's where the next representation for the Longhorns.
I wonder who could be here, huh?
Yeah. He's got John Henry Daly, the transfer from Utah to Michigan. Top first player he lists, then Colin Simmons. Then he's got Dylan Stewart. And then his sleeper is Clev Lubin, the Louisville guy. And I've actually done some research on him. He actually is a really nice natural pass rusher. But what are your thoughts? Obviously, Colin Simmons listed here. But Colin Simmons, I think he got a little disrespected this year. I still think that's the case. I can still think he's not getting the love that his skill set demands as a player. And maybe it's because he wasn't totally maximized as a player. I know that sounds crazy to say because he had 12 sacks, but think about it, guys. He was averaging 0.3 sacks a game in the first 5 games. Ooh. And then averaged 1.3 sacks a game in the last 8 games. Because he got 10.5 sacks in the last 8 games. He only had 1.5 sacks in the something like that, right? In the first 5
against the cupcakes. That you
he started. Exactly. He should have had like 10 sacks against that group. So I feel like he could hit another level here. I know 12 sacks is a lot for 99% of human beings who play football, but for Colin Simmons, I think he left a few opportunities out there to get him to 15, 16 sacks.
I totally agree. And what's going to be interesting here is, who are these guys always tied to, right? It's Dylan Stewart and Colin Simmons. Wide receiver, it's Jeremiah Smith or it's Cam Coleman.
Yeah.
I think you're going to see that in the NFL draft again when it comes to it in 2027. Dylan Stewart, Colin Simmons, what's the argument? Who goes first? Well, I think by the end of it, there won't be any questions at all when it comes to Colin Simmons as a top 10 prospect, as high as top 5. Bona fide stud, bona fide 10-year NFL career guy as well.
It's just fascinating to think. And he had a lot of penalties, and he was dropping back. I'm gonna try to go count. I got to go watch every snap then and count how many third downs they dropped him back in coverage to really piss off Longhorn fans and put that stat out there to you. All right, let's continue the list here. Rasheem Biles is the last Longhorn listed here. They got him at the linebacker position. He's the first one listed for Matt Miller, along with Peyton Pierce from Ohio State, Whit Weeks from LSU, and the sleeper is Nicholas Rodriguez from Missouri. I mean, we've tried to warn people, or at least is the best way to put it, about how impactful Rasheem Biles is going to be. I think people are now starting to get the idea. Yes. And his draft stock is going to be really interesting because his frame says mid-round pick, but his skills and productivity say early round pick.
Yeah. And look, what's more important, is it the way that you look or the way that you play, right? And Rod, I'm going to give you all the credit in the world whenever this comes to fruition. look, when Rod B puts his stamp of approval on a player, that typically is a good sign. And I think Rasheem Biles is someone that you've gone to bat for a little bit more than maybe anybody else. But the tape, I mean, just watch the tape at Pittsburgh, right? He lights up a stat sheet. He's a havoc-minded guy. He finds the football in the middle of the field, whether it's going front, left, back, right, doesn't matter. He gets the job done. I'm excited for Rasheem Biles and that tandem with Ty Anthony Smith, who could, with the full year here, could also end up in this conversation. I'll also add just a fun little note. Peyton Pierce at Ohio State. That's a former Lovejoy Leopard. So credit to my Lovejoy guys. Of course, there used to be 2 on the Texas roster. Now there's only 1.
That's a nice
fun game.
That's a nice little nugget right there. All right, let's thank our friends over at Advanced Pain Care. And I got one last question for CJ before we wrap things up. But first, a message from 2 legendary lifetime Longhorns and our friends from Advanced Pain Care.
Pros know the pain stops here.
Physical therapy helps me as an athlete then and now. And do I still need therapy? Yes. Advanced Pain Care helps with that.
Injuries will stack up. They'll add up. You can't let those injuries get you down, and Advanced Pain Care has been very helpful for me.
We can help with whatever's got you down, from nerve damage to our spinal cord stimulator. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. Same-day appointments available.
Advanced Pain Care. The pain stops here.
Pros know the pain stops here.
Just a quick nugget about this list. Longhorns had more players on the list than any other school. I think Texas Tech was second. Texas had 7. Texas Tech had 5, I believe. And 5 of those 7 are premium positions. Last question, CJ. What player would you pick for Texas to be one of these players to watch for the 2027 draft that's not on the list from that note?
I think the easy one for me is Jelani McDonald.
Yeah.
You know, that's the easy one. Again, I think Texas fans, I think folks in his camp thought he could have gone pro this year. Obviously, the decision was made to return. I think you look at it, he led your team in interceptions. He was a havoc-minded guy ever since he touched the field. Coming back for year 4, he's now seen the blueprint for a number of guys. Andrew Makuba returning for a 4th year. Jahdae Barron returning for a 5th year. He understands the value in development as well. And I'm excited to see how the game slows down once again for him, because that, to me, Rod, I'm surprised he wasn't on this list.
Yeah, nah, you stole mine, so I was gonna try to throw a curveball at you, but no, great minds think alike. That you're right. Jelani McDonald is he's not the only answer, but he's the best answer. Yeah. All right, great stuff, CJ, as always. Appreciate your expertise and hard work. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes, always twisting and tweaking it out. Thank you to each and every one of you out there for watching and for listening. And for CJ and for Matthew, I'm Lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers. Until next time, hook 'em horns.